Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to create an MCP client which makes use of MCP resources. In the previous video, we had created an MCP server to expose a document as a resource. In case you have not seen that video, you can visit that link mentioned in the top right corner and check out that entire video. We had also created a file watcher which used to monitor that file for any modifications. And if any modification was done, it used to trigger a change notification from MCP server. In today's video, we are going to be creating an MCP client which is going to use the resource which was exposed by the MCP server. We will also be handling the notifications which are getting sent from the MCP server. All the code that we are going to be writing today is present in this GitHub repo. Also, if you like this video till now, please subscribe to this channel. In the previous video, we had created an MCP server for exposing resources. Now we are shifting focus to creation of an MCP client to use that resource. We'll choose the required dependencies and we'll go ahead with MCP Client and Ollama. Ollama being my preferred large language model provider. You are free to use any other large language model provider which is supported by Spring AI. After this, I'll just have to visit pom.xml and make a tiny change, add webflux to MCP Client's dependency. And now let's head to properties file to configure it. In the properties file, first thing that I'll do is I'll have to add the dependencies and properties for my Ollama, and I will add some configuration for my MCP client. I will set the MCP client type as sync, and I also will have to declare the URL of my MCP server. Since I am creating the MCP client to connect to MCP server in SSE mode, so I will have to declare the server URL over here. The name of my MCP server was my-MCP server-resources, and it was running at localhost 8040. And I will just enable the logging level to debug mode for Spring AI. Let's create a controller, and to begin with, we will create an endpoint which is going to list out all the resources, meaning files, which have been exposed by our MCP server. For this example, since the directory had only one file and the server has only exposed one resource, but still we are going to expose that resource only. This part is something which you already should be knowing. We will add the dependencies of chat client. This is new. We are adding MCP sync clients so that during startup the controller should have information how many MCP sync clients does it have. In this example, we just have one MCP sync client. So let's create a builder and add the dependencies of MCP sync client. After this is done, let's create an endpoint. I'll call this endpoint as /documents. And let's start implementation of this endpoint. First, I have to fetch what all resources I have been exposed by the MCP server. Let me quickly add a null check. If MCP client is not there, then there's no point in going forward. But if it is there, let me choose the first MCP client. I'm choosing first MCP client because for this example, I have just created one client. Once I do client.list resources, it will actually give me the list of the resources which have been exposed. And to make the output much more user friendly, I'll return a map of string and object. And here I'll just return the metadata of each file that has been exposed by the MCP server. Let's quickly see how to get the metadata for each resource which is exposed by the MCP server. We will stream on the resources, and line by line we are going to extract its metadata. So name we can get from name property. Similarly, URI begins with file prefix, and description is what we had set when we had exposed the resource in the MCP server project. Let me quickly correct the return types, and after this I'll just have to return documents. I'll return the number of documents or resources exposed and the actual documents also. Hence, if you see, the return type for this function is map of string and object. Now let's create another endpoint where we are actually going to take an input from the user and use the resource to generate a response from the large language model. This is kind of similar that we had been doing in RAG, but here rather than using vector, DB and generation of embeddings, we are going to directly embed the entire resource into the context of large language model. The process is going to be very simple. We are going to call the prompt method, insert the user's query that the user has sent. But the question remains, how are we going to get the text content from the file which is exposed by the MCP server? What should be the content? So I have given this prompt based on this file content. Answer this question. I know the question is given by the user, but what is the content? As of this moment, I still don't have access to the content. So let me just create a placeholder for the content. I am going to fill it later on. Question is something that I can fill right now. And call.content is just going to give me a string value. Now let's try to fill this gap. How to get the content of the resource exposed by the server. We'll create a new resource service. The purpose of this service is to get the latest content of the file. We are creating a variable text content, and this variable is going to hold the latest value of coverletter.txt. Now since this is a client, it does not have the direct access to this file. The client can be hosted at any other place. It has to read the content from the MCP server. Let's see how to get this done. Since we had created a getter of text content, let's auto-wire resource service and let's make the compiler happy in the basic controller. Now we have the text content and the query in the controller. But as of this moment, still we have not received the actual content of the file. Let's see how to get it done. The first point is we have to get hold of MCP Sync Client. Again, the process is same. We will have to inject this MCP Sync Client first, and then we have to use it. For doing this, in this service class, first we are going to auto-wire application context, and using the application context.getBean, we are going to get the object of MCP Sync Clients. Here we are auto-wiring application context using the constructor. After this, we will receive the beans of MCP Sync Client. Now again, this is going to be a list, and we just want the first MCP Sync Client. We want the first because for this example, we just have only one MCP Sync Client. In case you have multiple, then you don't need to do get first. You can iterate over all the MCP Sync Client and get their resources. I chose the first MCP Sync Client, and I will use list resources method to get all the resources. Again, for this example, I have only one resource which is exposed. So again, I'm going to use get first from the resources. Now let's see how to receive the string text from the cover letter.txt. Because as of now, we still don't know what is the text content. So this is the syntax that you will have to follow. It's a bit verbose as compared to the syntaxes that we have been familiar with. So you will have to get used to this syntax a bit. We will have to invoke read resource request, and we will pass resource URI. And using the result.contents, we are going to check whether it's a text resource file or not. If yes, we are going to map it and typecast it into text resource content and call the text object from this, so that actually we get a string text. So we are typecasting it to text resource contents. After that, we just have to call a text method. Okay. Now compiler also is happy, and we have received the actual string data inside the cover letter.txt. So this is the syntax that you will have to get used to when you want to read the data which is present inside the files which is exposed by the MCP server. Now this is the method populate text content, and we also want this content to be there when the application starts, when the MCP client starts. So let's create a post construct method, and during startup itself we will invoke this populate text content, so that the variable inside the controller, it will have the data which is present in cover letter.txt file. Now after doing all of this, we are still missing one piece of the puzzle. The MCP server also is sending notifications when the file gets changed. We have still not handled it. So let's create a new class, resource change service, which implements MCP client customizer. By doing so, we will have to override a method customize, and this method is actually serves as a listener. So whenever the MCP server publishes a notification that the resource has changed, the control will come, or this listener would get activated. It would know that MCP server has sent out a notification about a resource change. And that's the event that we are going to utilize. I think I made a typo here. It should be MCP schema.resource. Let me quickly fix this. So once this becomes MCP schema and import, and yes, now the compilation issues are resolved. And over here I'll just have to make sure that I call populate method of the resource service. Here I'm just logging that resource changed, and after that I will have to invoke populate text content, because ultimately this method is responsible for keeping the text content variable up to date. So the responsibility of this customized method is to listen for resource change notifications. After that, it will just call the populate method of the resource service, and that's it. And that will complete our entire pipeline. And we are ready for demo. So for the demo, I will have to start my MCP server first. Let me quickly start it up. During startup, you will see that I have registered one resource, which is coverletter.txt. After the server is started, I will now start my MCP client. And now my client also should be up and running. Yes. Now let's head to demo. Here I am invoking the first API, which is documents. This API is going to list out all the resources exposed by the MCP server. Here I had shown you URI, name and description. Now let's hit the actual chat API. Before that, let me quickly show you the content of the coverletter.txt. This cover letter is of Sam, and Sam has 5 years of experience, and that's what I am asking in the chat. That tell me the experience of Sam. And it read the file via MCP server and told me that Sam has 5 years of experience. As of this moment, it is already pretty cool. Now let's test the changes. What if I make a change to coverletter.txt? What happens then? Let me open coverletter.txt, and at the same time I will also show you the logs inside the MCP server. Let me change the experience from 5 to 10 years and hit Ctrl S. Let's save. Now you see file updated. That means the MCP server was able to send out this notification. Let's see if the client received this notification or not. In the console logs of client, you see resource changed. That means client also received it and it invoked populate text content. And hopefully by now our data also should get updated. If I ask the same question now, it should tell me the experience, the latest experience, which is correct. Sam has total experience of 10 years. This is the power of MCP resources, that without doing any re-indexing via RAG, you are able to see the latest content. Thanks for watching this video. You can also check out the other videos from this channel.